Hello. Hello, good people. Um, so, I haven't really planned out this video. Not that I ever do, but just letting you know. Um, what I want to do today is read this page from the Focusing org, whatever it's called, Focusing Institute, on the 6 steps of focusing. So, yeah, roughly, I'm gonna sort of imagine that I'm talking to somebody that doesn't know what focusing is. Um, in many ways, the whole point of this video is just to try to explain the entire process of focusing all at once as I understand it, as I do it. Obviously, I'm not going to touch on everything. This is just off the cuff, first try. But I will say that if you asked me right now, what are the 6 steps? I couldn't actually tell you what they are. um, because I'm pretty sure the 6 steps were formalized in Eugene's book, Focusing, and I actually have not read that one. I've read others by him, I'm reading others by him, I've read papers, etc., but I haven't read that one. And that one is like the main one, or like the one that, was most popular. But yeah, so that's where the 6 steps come from. I don't know them, and I have heard that there are people out there who only understand focusing to be the 6 steps. And I think that's, understandable if that's what it says in the book, but it's unfortunate because it's so much more than that, and it's not really about steps in terms of steps of a method. It is about taking steps forward in your experience, but it's not about having a particular number of steps as a method. Focusing, if it's only a method, kind of misses the point. So maybe I'll get into that as we go along. But yeah, so I wanted to start with this tweet here. To focus is to symbolize raw experience. So first of all, Eugene Genlin, he's known as this guy who did therapy, right? And he was the student of Carl Rogers, but really he was a PhD in philosophy at the University of Chicago. And during his graduate work, he worked with Carl Rogers and got drawn in and involved in the therapy and psychology, but that's not really where he comes from. That's not really his area of expertise. He's a philosophy guy, and so his question that kind of brought him into therapy and psychology was, how do we symbolize raw experiencing? Raw experience, right? So raw experience as in the inarticulable, just life, like all of our sensation, all of the data that we get from our bodies and our senses and everything like that. That stuff which is not concept. The moment by moment experience of life before it's described and given words. How do we symbolize that? And how do we do it in any way that's accurate? And that's, then where the felt sense comes into play. Again, that might not be something you know about, the felt sense. But it's like, how do you know, for example, if you forget a word, if you forget someone's name, you don't remember the name, but you also know what it isn't, right? And you like have it on the tip of your tongue. Someone might tell you like, oh, is it this? Is it that? You might be like, is it that? But you know that it's not any of those things, and yet you don't remember the actual name or the actual word. So there's this sort of weird, subtle, mysterious accuracy that we can have about the symbolization right? Like we can feel almost what the name is, what the word is, but we don't have the word. And when we get it back, it's like we relax. There's a relief. It just clicks, right? And that's this process of, well, I'm sure I'll get more into it as I read, but that process of checking back with your felt sense when you come up with words to describe your experience, when you come up with words to describe that sort of murky emotional experience in your body, the feelings that you have, you know that they're accurate when you have that click, that felt shift. That's what a felt shift is. It's like, yes, it's accurate. It's that feeling that you have when you're like, yes, that is the name that I couldn't remember for the last 10 minutes. It's a relief, and it's a somatic experience. But how the heck does that work? It doesn't really make sense. It's super mysterious, but that was really Jenlin's whole project in a way, was to figure out how the heck does that process work? How do we get words? How do we get symbols for that just pure raw experience? And then how do we know if those symbols are actually symbolizing the experience and are not just, like how do we know that when we say I'm mad or I'm happy, that that's not fully correct? Because we can tell somehow it doesn't actually match the intricacy of our actual experience. Somehow we can tell that, but it's very hard to explain, and so that's what Jenlin was trying to do. And focusing is that philosophical project brought into the therapy room, basically. And then the 6 steps are just a simplification, formalization of that process. But in essence, the process is symbolizing raw experience, and however you can do that is what focusing is about. So, starting with that, if you want to know more about like what the heck experience means as he describes it, I have done another video where I read this paper of his, which is quite old. It's from 1957. He died only in the last 10 years, I believe. So this is very old, early on in his career. But he talks in here about what the heck does he mean by experience, and what does it mean to symbolize that. And I have a video on it. This is the actual paper. If you're interested in that, I definitely recommend it. But all that said, let's just go to the 6 steps thing here on the website. Again, I don't even know what the 6 steps are. I know it starts with clearing a space. I know there's something about finding a handle, but otherwise I don't know what the actual steps are and what the order is. I mostly have learned like concrete, practical stuff about focusing from Ann Weiser Cornell, who has the book The Power of Focusing, which is like a very, very simplified version of focusing, but then she provides a bunch of focusing prompts, which are much more fluid in that you can just use them as you go along as appropriate, but they're not in any specific order that you must rigidly follow. So that's what I use, and there's a lot more than six of them, so that's where I'm coming from. But yeah, let's just go. I'll read it as I normally do. I read these things, and then I riff on them as I go, talk about my experience, talk about my understanding, try to figure it out as best as I can. So maybe zoom in a little more. So most people find it easier to learn focusing through individual instruction than through simply reading about it. The classic 6 steps defined by Eugene Jenlin in his 1978 book Focusing are offered here as a starting point for understanding the process. Yeah, so 78. So this paper 1957, so quite a ways later the book came out. Um, Although these steps may provide an introduction, it is important to remember that they are not the way to do focusing. Indeed, most teachers have developed their own styles of teaching which don't conform to these specific steps. There is no rigid, fixed agenda for the inner world. Many focusing sessions bear little resemblance to the technical process that we define here. Okay, that's cool. I'm glad that it says all that up front. Yeah, I think I said it already, but like to think that focusing is literally just a method or literally just a set of steps is to pretty much entirely miss the point. And if you go to my channel, or if you know my channel, I have a bunch of videos where I'm reading my highlights from another one of his books called Focusing Oriented Psychotherapy. And that book is all about how to bring focusing and the essence, the spirit of what focusing is about, how to bring that into any therapeutic process, any therapeutic modality that you please, whether it's like cognitive behavioral stuff, dream work, somatic stuff, whatever. You can bring it in and it makes all of them more effective. So focusing is not a method to use in competition with other methods. Genlin says himself over and over again, don't use focusing by itself. It's a thing that kind of underlies therapy. I could try to pull up a tweet, but it would take too long. But it's like focusing is about what makes therapy work. How does, like, what is going on in the therapeutic process, in the therapy room, in the relationship between the therapist and the client, and in the client themselves when therapy works. So him and Carl Rogers did a bunch of research back in the day. I don't know what years it was, but they were doing like deep reflection on studying like all of Carl Rogers' cases and stuff. And they were asking that, like, what is going on when the therapy actually works? And I don't think it was even actually just Carl Rogers' cases that they were reviewing. They were reviewing recordings of all sorts of therapy. And they discovered that weirdly, the one thing that was constant in all of the therapy that had some impact, like the person developed and grew and felt better later on, was that the person would be like speaking, the client would be speaking, and they would stumble. They would be like, I don't know. Rather than being able to speak in very articulate ways, they would stumble. They would slow down. They would trip over themselves. They would be unsure of what they were trying to say, because, and then that's what they figured out after that, is what was going on is that those people were sensing inwardly, sensing into their felt sense in their body to notice the part of their experience, the aspect of their feelings, the aspect of their thoughts and beliefs that they didn't yet have words for. And they were trying to figure that out, and they were trying to symbolize that part, right? It's like, I feel angry, but there's something more than that. There's something else. It's not just anger, but I don't know what it is. And then you slowly spend time with that, and you try things out, and then you find an accurate symbolization of like, what is that more to the anger? And now you've increased your understanding of what's going on in the inner world, and it's reshaped what's going on inside you. You have a more understanding, and then you have further murky edges. It's like, okay, so it's like anger, but like also kind of sad, or like it's anger, but it's like whatever. Um, it's anger in this like I want to punch him kind of way, right? Okay, it's like, oh yeah, that's accurate. Like there's that aspect to it. It's like anger that I feels violent, and then it's like, okay, now you have that, and like sense of that. It's like, is there more to that? This violence thing. It's like, what's what else is there to that? It's like the violence is like I want to defend myself. I want to push them away or something like that. I'm just making it up, but progressively, step by step, symbolizing and articulating those unclear edges of what you're feeling, so you gain more and more and more and more clarity, and your experience changes. That's what therapeutic movement is, as Jen Lin and Carl Rogers see it anyway. So yeah, let's keep going. So we offer to you 6 steps, with the caveat that it is a scaffolding for you to use for as long as it's useful. As you grow in your practice and experience our many different teachers, you will probably move beyond these steps to allow a more fluid process that suits you. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I'm kind of more or less doing focusing all the time in my life. Sometimes it's very explicit and I'm sitting down and I'm like, okay, let me spend some time with this. But other times it's just like I'm walking around. I record my journals with an audio recorder, so I'm speaking and I'm trying to make sense of what I'm feeling as I go. And so all of my journaling effectively is focusing from my perspective. Sometimes it's more cognitive, but it's always taking into account like, oh, does that actually what's the felt sense? Does this accurately represent what I'm feeling? And if not, how can I try to make it more accurate, get more clarity? So yeah, all of my journaling is effectively focusing now. So I don't follow a process at all. It's just a constant reference back to this idea, right? Of like, I'm trying to symbolize my raw experience in the most accurate way that I can. So what follows is a lightly edited excerpt from the Focusing Manual, Chapter 4 of Focusing by Eugene Gentlin. The interactive focusing can be broken down into 6 main sub-acts or movements. As you gain more practice, you won't need to think of these as 6 separate parts of the process. To think of them as separate movements makes the process seem more mechanical than it is, or will be for you later. I have subdivided the process in this way because I've learned from years of experimenting that this is one of the effective ways to teach focusing to people who have never tried it before. Think of this as only the basics. As you progress and learn more, you will add to these basic instructions, clarify them, and approach them from different angles. Eventually, perhaps not the first time you go through it, you will have the experience of something shifting inside. Yeah, I mean, I have all of my own kind of like variations on it, and I experiment with this all the time too. One of the things that I really like experimenting with nowadays is kind of like taking what could be considered affirmations, right? Like, I am XYZ way, like a way that I aspire to be. And rather than just being like rotely being like, I am awesome, I am awesome, I am awesome, I'm a winner, whatever that is, right? I will say it, but I'll say it with the intention to notice what happens in my body as I say it and afterwards. How does it feel to say it? Is it easy to say it? Does it just flow out of me? Do I have resistance to saying it? Can I only say it quietly and sort of bashfully? Can I say it loudly with confidence? Right? Is it muffled? Do I sort of swallow my words, or, so there's that aspect of it. And then after I say it, what do I notice in my body? What's the felt sense? Do I suddenly notice does my stomach tense up? Does my heart start racing? I mean, or even just slightly, right? Does my heart start beating a little faster? Do I feel like I'm blushing? Do I feel tension in my body? Do I feel some kind of movement in my body having said this thing? That's what I'm paying attention to. So I say the thing, but it's not so much about saying the thing so much as saying it and then noticing what is the felt sense of saying it. Because then I can be like, oh, I said that I'm awesome, but now that I've said I'm awesome, I feel super like nervous or something. Like my heart is kind of feeling clenched, and my pulse just started moving faster. It's like, I'm not comfortable saying I'm awesome. What's that? Like, what's that about? And then I can explore that, so that's something I do a lot. So here are the instructions in brief form, manual style. If you want to try them out, do so easily, gently. If you find difficulty in one step or another, don't push too hard. Just move on to the next one. You can always come back. So easily, gently, like, don't force your way through. Like it was said earlier, this is not a mechanical process. You have to pay attention to what's going on inside of you, because that's the essence of what makes this work. If you're not noticing the inside experience, if you're not bringing that sort of interoceptive sense to the process, then you miss the entire point. You have to notice the feeling that's going on inside of your body. So, step 1, clearing a space. What I will ask you to do will be silent, just to yourself. Take a moment just to relax. All right. Now, inside you, I would like you to pay attention inwardly, in your body, perhaps in your stomach or chest. Now see what comes there when you ask, how is my life going? What is the main thing for me right now? Sense within your body. Let the answers come slowly from this sensing. When some concern comes, do not go inside it. Stand back. Say, yes, that's there. I can feel that. There. Let there be a little space between you and that. Then ask what else you feel. Wait again and sense. Usually there are several things. So, yeah, clearing a space. There are other people talk about this, like taking an inventory. It's basically what you're doing is just being like, okay, what are all the things inside of me that are, like on my mind? Like, what are the things that are weighing on me right now? Right? If you were like thinking about it in terms of like productivity and like to-do lists, it's like, okay, you sit down at the beginning of your workday and it's like, what are all of the things that are weighing on me that I need to do, that are causing me, tension and worry and stuff like that. And let me just like write down all of the things, right? That's like what getting things done is about, right? It's like getting that all out of your head onto paper in front of you, so they're not in you, so you can see it, and it gives you more space internally, and then you can address the things So that's kind of what this is, clearing a space, right? Also, it's like you want to create space internally, right? To have curiosity, to have a sort of curious, compassionate, empathetic state of feeling. You can't be weighed down by all your concerns, right? You want to be able to bring that energy, that curious, compassionate, empathetic feeling to the concerns that you have rather than being weighed down by them. So the whole idea is clear a space, gain space within you by noticing what are those things inside of you, and then bringing them out and putting them, in a sort of imaginary way or whatever, like outside of you on the table. Like in internal family systems, it's like, okay, what parts are active right now? Like, who is here around this issue? Like, who has something to say about this? Is there a protector part? Is there another protector part? Is there a firefighter part? Is there an exile? Like, who's here, with something to say? What are all the concerns, right? So maybe it's like, oh, I just had this fight with my girlfriend. That's weighing on me. Okay, I can take that. I put it out in front of me, and I get a little more space internally, right? Because I can come back to that. But right now, it's not inside me, it's there. Okay, what else? Oh, there's this project at work that's really stressful, and I'm not sure I can finish it in time or whatever, so I'll take that. Put that in front of me. So I have some more space now. Then you have it, it's like, oh, I need to call my parents and like figure out some stuff with them. Take that, put that out in front of you. Oh, I have now even more space. What else? Oh, I gotta like make an appointment with the doctor because I've been having back pain. That's getting stressing me out, and then it's like, oh, I gotta pay for the doctor, blah 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 blah. Take that out, put it in front of you. I have even more space, right? So now you have all this internal space, and all those things that were weighing you down are out in front of you. You can see what they are. And now you have the space internally to go back to any one of those and address it with more curiosity, with more compassion, with less stress, because you yourself have more space. You've just cleared a space inside you. And he says, do not go inside it, because it's like, no, we're not just going to see like, oh, this first thing that comes up, let me dive into that. We want to, I think Anne Weiser Cornell, who's one of Eugene Genlin's more famous students, she calls it disidentification. So it's not dissociation and it's not identification, right? You have this thing. If it was internal family systems, you'd talk about blending with a part. So you want to not identify with the part. You don't want to identify with this thing, this stressor, the thing that you're noticing. But you also don't want to dissociate from it. So you want to disidentify. Create just a little bit of space. And Anne Weiser Cornell has a nice little language trick, since her PhD, I believe, is in linguistics, where she says, just change the language to being like, I am stressed, to I notice stress in there somewhere. I notice something is stressed in me. So it's not identification, but you're also not dissociating from it. You're saying, look, I notice it. I notice it. I have enough separation that I can say, I notice it in me. I notice it inside there somewhere. Right? So then you can kind of hold it in front of you, and you're not blended with it, but you're not pushing it away. Another way that people talk about doing this process of clearing a space is to ask yourself, what is between me and feeling all good right now? Like, what is stopping me from feeling really good and easy and nice and relaxed right now? right? What's in the way? What's stopping me from feeling that? And it's like, oh, it's this thing from work. Oh, it's this thing from my relationship. There's this thing, that I have to do later. All these things are weighing me down, and they are what's occupying my emotional and mental bandwidth so that I can't just feel all good right now. And then you take those and you kind of put those out in front of you, and now you have a space. That's the idea. So I do that. It's like, okay, well, I'm feeling all like tense right now, anxious right now. Like, what's on my mind? Like, this thing, there's that thing, there's that thing, there's that thing. And even just doing that and paying attention the whole time to how you feel in your body, oftentimes I'll notice that a lot of the tension goes away. It resides just by articulating them and by putting them kind of out and making an inventory. And like one thing that I always like as a really, really good sign is, my stomach will start gurgling. Like my digestive process will resume. It will have been frozen and kind of stuck, right? Because there's all that tension in my guts because I'm stressed out. And as I relax, that tension kind of recedes, and my digestion picks up again, and it's like gurgle, 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 and that's always like a really good sign. It makes me feel nice. It's like, okay, yeah, I'm relaxing again. The processes within me are resuming because the tension is not constricting them anymore. Okay, so step 2, felt sense. From among what came, select one personal problem to focus on. Do not go inside it. Stand back from it. Of course, there are many parts to that one thing you are thinking about, too many to think of each one alone. But you can feel all of these things together. Pay attention there where you usually feel things, and in there you can get a sense of what all of the problem feels like. Let yourself feel the unclear sense of all of that, right? So this is, the felt sense. You might not be able to articulate everything about this thing that's stressing you out, but you obviously can feel it, right? You're experiencing the stress of it, so just feel it. Notice what it feels like to have this thing, but don't go inside it. So like, don't try to analyze it too much. Kind of hold it out in front of you. This is complicated because it's such a metaphorical way of talking about a feeling that's inside of you, but like, hold it in front of you and notice how it feels. Right? You can go further into it and be like, oh, there's this thing at work, and like part of it is that like I don't feel up to the task, part of it is that like there's so much at stake, part of it is that there's so little time, part of it is that my boss is a fucking asshole. Like, there's all these parts to it, right? But it's one big thing. And before you go into it and break it all out and analyze it, it's just this one big thing. I have this thing at work, and it's stressing me out, whatever. And you can just feel that. And you can feel how the problem is for you. And you get a felt sense of that in your body. Right? Maybe you notice tingling all around your body. Maybe you notice your chest is like, feels tight, and your breathing it's hard to breathe easily, or your stomach feels like there's a knot in it, right? Or you feel maybe like this sense of dread, this almost like sick feeling, like almost like a gaggy feeling, maybe you feel like a heart, like a, what do you call it, like acidy feeling, right? Like stomach acid, like it's just burning in there. So it's like, what's the felt sense of this experience? And sometimes you just gotta wait, you know? Um, you also have to have a sensitivity to your body for this. And some people really don't. I haven't always had that. I've been practicing developing that sensitivity for many years now. Jenlin says, he's like, not everyone learns this very quickly. Even in working directly with people, he says that some of his clients have taken months to get it. But one trick that I remember him saying was like, can you feel breakfast in your belly? Like, can you feel what you ate earlier? Can you feel that there's that food that you ate there? And if you can, you could probably also feel other things in your body. If you can't, then he and some of his other students would say, well, that's fine, because you're also noticing that you're not noticing anything, and that's something. As you continue to pay attention, you'll notice more. Maybe you don't notice anything right now, but you'll begin to notice more over time. And maybe it just takes more intense things to notice, right? Like if you pinch yourself, you can feel that, right? Or if you really need to pee, you can probably feel that, right? So you start to pay attention to those things, and then your sensitivity grows over time. So I don't know if it's a necessarily one-to-one perfect analogy, but there is this thing called interoception, which you may know, you might not know. Interoception is kind of thought of as the sixth sense. There's our normal, like, sight, hearing, taste, touch, smell. And then there's interoception and there's proprioception. So proprioception is our ability to know and have a sense of like where our body is in space, right? It's like if you have your eyes closed and you have your arms outstretched, you know that your arms are outstretched and that they're far away from each other. And if I told you to like touch your nose, you can probably do that without opening your eyes because you just have a sense of where your body is in space. Not everyone has that, and that can also get messed up by brain injuries and stuff. So then interoception is kind of like the flip side of that, is your ability to sense the inside of you, the internal feelings, feeling your body from the inside. So your ability, for example, to feel your own heartbeat, to feel the tension in your body. If you look up interoception on Amazon, you'll get a lot of books written for parents of children with autism, because apparently with autism, oftentimes there's a lack of interoceptive capacity, and so your kid might not actually be able to notice their internal bodily signals, right? Like the pressure in their bladder or their colon. Like they might not be able to notice these things which seem so obvious and normal, but are these signals inside of us that's like, oh, I have a bodily function that need, like, my bladder is full, I need to pee, I need to go to the bathroom, right? And if you don't notice that, then you're gonna pee yourself, right? And so it's like that, and so many other things, like, am I hungry? How does my stomach feel? Am I full? If you don't have any sense of that, you won't even know, like, do I need to eat? Am I done eating? You just have no sense of that. And I've been practicing this for years, as I said, and like you can really refine this. Even if you've never had a problem of knowing that you're hungry or not, you can really get subtle with this. And you can be like, oh yeah, I literally only need one more bite of food. Or you can be like, bringing one more bite of food to your mouth and be like, no, actually, I'm perfectly good right now. Because you can tell on the inside of your body that you are perfectly full and comfortable and past that is uncomfortable now. And it really changes how you eat, for example, when you have that level of sensitivity on the inside. So interoception is kind of another way of talking about felt sense, though not necessarily the same thing. It's pretty close at the very least. So if you want to explore more about what it would mean to develop that ability to have a felt sense, look into interoception. Okay, step 3. Handle. So, what is the quality of this unclear felt sense? Let a word, a phrase, or an image come up from the felt sense itself. It might be a quality word, like tight, sticky, scary, stuck, heavy, jumping, or a phrase or an image. Stay with the quality of the felt sense till something fits it just right. So again, if we were talking about internal family systems, you might describe this as like ask that part of you that you're working with, how it feels from its perspective, right? And it might be like, and then wait for it to answer back, right? Don't describe it and analyze it from your own mind. Like, wait for that part of you to answer of itself. So let the answer arise. If you've never experienced this, it's hard to kind of describe, because there is such a tendency to be like, analyze it and figure it out yourself. But it really is just be like, oh, what's the feeling of this? And then wait, and like literally do not try to answer it yourself. Just continue focusing on the feeling, and maybe a word will just kind of show up. Or it's like you're noticing it more, you're paying closer attention to the feeling, and it's like, oh, it's like a balloon. It feels like a balloon that's inflating. It's a balloon that's inflating really fast, and it's like it's like almost gonna burst or something like that, right? Like, that's how it feels, and that is the image coming to you, right? So it could be whatever. But yeah, so a handle is just like, the idea of a handle is like a word or an image or a thing that you can grasp that provides a handle for you to hold on to that felt sense, right? And then now that you have a handle on it, you can begin to manipulate it, right? Manipulate means move with your hands. So yeah, I have a whole video on when you're struggling to find a handle, so maybe I'll link to that in the comments. Yeah. Is there anything more that I want to say about handles? No, I'll move on. So step 4, resonating. Go back and forth between the felt sense and the word, phrase, or image. Check how they resonate with each other. See if there is a little bodily signal that lets you know there is a fit. To do it, you have to have the felt sense there again, as well as the word. Let the felt sense change, if it does, and also the word or picture, until they feel just right in capturing the quality of the felt sense. Right, so that, again, it's like, okay, so I'm like anxious, it's like I have this like tension all around my body, is like this heat in my shoulders, tightness in my shoulder blades, right? All of those are handles. It's like a buzzing feeling. And then I check back. I'm resonating, right? It's like it's a buzzing feeling. It's like, does buzzing, in that sense of what I described at the very beginning, it's like when you forget the name or you forget the word and then you remember it again, and you know that's it because it just like clicks into place, right? Same thing with finding a handle and resonating it back with the felt sense. It's like, okay, is buzzing how this feels? And maybe it's not, that didn't really, it seems close, but like it didn't really like click. It's like humming, like reverberating, vibrating. I'm just kind of trying to do it with how I feel right now. It's like this shaking, burning, right? And you just do that until something really connects. And it might not happen perfectly, but you can probably feel as you get closer to it. And as he says here, let the felt sense change, right? As you give words to it, the felt sense itself, what you feel in your body, might evolve. And so it's like this sort of dance between like the felt sense evolves, you're trying to find a word or a handle that captures it, and as you provide an option, it's like, oh, it changes how it feels a little bit, and so you make movement, and that's okay. But sometimes it really does just like goes perfectly, and it's like, oh wow, that is exactly it. That's exactly how I feel. And usually with that comes like this deep sense of relaxation, right? Like my stomach will start gurgling, or just all this tension will just like slide off your back, and you're like, oh wow, I feel heard. Okay, so step 5, and that too, right, is like when I talked about the research that Jenlin and Rogers did together, and people would be in therapy and they'd be like, I don't know how to describe that, right? It's because they're trying to find a handle, and then they're also going slow and sensitively enough that they are checking back and being like, is that actually, it's like, I don't know how to describe it. It's like, I'm really sad. No. It's like I'm terrified, but like I just want to run away and hide and cry. Right? And like that might click more, But each attempt to articulate it shows you like, oh, that wasn't quite it, but it's kind of closer, and you continually try to find a new handle that resonates with the felt sense until you have something really accurate. And the goal is not to just get to a point where you like have the perfect words. The whole point is to continually go through that process step by step. And therapeutic movement comes from going through that process and articulating that unclear aspect of experience. And as you continue to do that and gain more clarity and articulate more, there will be further unclear edges. And you continually do that. And it's a never-ending process, because life is a never-ending process as long as you're alive. Like, there's more to experience. You're feeling, you're alive, you're experiencing something. So the more you articulate, now you just have a new horizon of inarticulate experience, and you can keep doing that. So, step 5, asking. So now ask, what is it about this whole problem that makes this quality, which you have just named or pictured. Oh, let me try that again. What is it about this whole problem that makes this quality? That's a confusing sentence. I think it means like, what is it that makes it what it is? Like, what makes it uncomfortable? What makes it sad? What makes it scared? What makes it sticky, right? Whatever. What makes it burning? So, make sure the quality is sensed again, freshly, vividly, not just remembered from before. When it is here again, tap it, touch it, be with it, asking, what makes the whole problem so blank? Or you ask, what is in this sense? Right, so it's like, what makes the problem so how this felt sense is? What makes it so uncomfortable? What makes it so, like, yucky, stressful, whatever it is? Right, so you have this articulation now. You have a handle which you have resonated back with the felt sense, and you're like, yeah, that is pretty much accurate of a way to describe it. And so now you're asking a new question to get more information about that, right? It's like, so what makes it so that? What makes it so yucky? What makes it such a shitty feeling? Right? And so now you begin to open up new edges to that experience. If you get a quick answer without a shift in the felt sense, just let that kind of answer go by. Return your attention to your body and freshly find the felt sense again. Then ask it again. Be with the felt sense till something comes along with a shift, a slight give or release. Right? Because this is not an intellectual process. It's not something that has to make sense logically. It has to make sense just like somatically, right? Logic plays no real part in this. It's like, oh, it feels like a fucking earthworm. Like, this problem at work feels like a fat old grandpa. And that might work. That might make sense. Like, that might articulate it somehow. This fucking problem from work feels like a fat old grandpa. Yeah, wow, like that clicks. That like provides sort of relief. And it's like, okay, well, so like, what makes this problem feel like a fat old grandpa? And then then you're like, okay, like, what is it about fat old grandpa? It's like, and again, staying in touch with actual feeling in your body. And now you have this handle, fat old grandpa. It's like, it's gross or something like that. I don't know. Or it's scary. It's like I should love it, but I don't like it, or something like that. Whatever, but you ask about the handle. What is it that makes it so? And you do the same process again. It's like you're looking for that felt sense. What's in this sense? What makes the whole problem feel that way? So you're looking for further fuzziness, further raw experience, and then you're kind of looking for a way to articulate that. And ideally, something comes to you that does articulate it. And if it does, and it articulates it well, you will probably experience a shift, a slight give or release, like a somatic thing, right? Relaxation. Like, you might just start breathing easier. Your belly might relax. You might have a knot in your belly and suddenly it's gone. Right? And then your stomach might gurgle, like as mine always does. Okay. Step 6. Receive whatever comes with a shift in a friendly way. Stay with it for a while, even if it is only a slight release. Whatever comes, this is only one shift. There will be others. You will probably continue after a little while, but stay here for a few moments. So again, this is a somatic process. You don't want to rush ahead. You want to feel everything. Because, the shift, that relaxation, you can only notice it if you're paying attention to how you feel in your body. And that's where the movement happens. The movement happens in your body. So stay with it. Just notice how it feels. Notice if it's changing as you're paying attention. Right? And that experience, that's the raw experience. That's your life experience inside of you going on. And it should be moving because we're living organisms that are constantly in motion. Right? Our bodies are literally constantly in motion. And if they're not, that's a bad sign. That means we're probably dead. So pay attention to that movement inside of you, that process inside of you. See how it feels, see how it's moving. And if you're going to continue with this process, you'll probably go through this again, and you'll continue to try to symbolize that raw experience, right? So maybe you've had a felt shift, you have, gotten an answer to this above step of asking. Like, it's like, I want to love it, but it's scary and I don't like it. And then you say that and you're like, yeah, that's it. And you feel like this release. And so you notice that and you stay with that and you pay attention to how that feels. And you're having more raw experience, right? So now you could be like, now it's like this soft, it feels like bread dough in my belly, right? Like my belly just feels like rising dough. It's warm, it's bubbly, it's alive, whatever, and you can just continue to do that. Continue symbolizing your raw experience. If during these instructions somewhere you have spent a little while sensing and touching an unclear holistic body sense of this problem, then you have focused, right? So if you've gone through this and you've spent some time sensing a unclear sense, then you've focused. That's it. If you pay attention to the raw experiencing in you and you let the symbolization happen, even if nothing comes, even if you don't even get an image or a word, just paying attention to that raw experience, you've done focusing. 6 steps, 10 steps, 100 steps, 0 steps, whatever, right? That's the essence of it. Yeah. It doesn't matter whether the body shift came or not. It comes on its own. We don't control that. That's a huge part of this. It's like we don't control the felt sense. We don't control our bodily experience. That's what's going on. It's like we have to give up control. When we pay attention to our body, it's like we have to give up, let go, like have faith, and be like, I am not in control here. I'm going to ask my body what's going on there and see what it tells me. I'm not going to be the one that answers. I'm going to see what comes. And I don't know what's going to come. You have to let go of control. So in a way, it's like discovering the wilderness within you, like, right? That's historically, wilderness is a scary idea. That which is outside of civilization, that which is outside of our control, that which we don't understand and is just murky and dark and shadowy, that's a scary thing. We don't like it and we want to control it because we don't have ability to make it do what we want, right? And that exists inside of us too. And the focusing is about paying attention to that wildness, that wilderness inside of you, that unknown. And just waiting and seeing what happens. And it comes on its own. Yeah. So I guess I'll just read the rest of this and see what's going on here. Instructions for not following instructions. Isn't it wrong to publish instructions for inward personal process? One danger with a set of instructions is that people might use them to close off other ways. Anything human becomes more than one method. Please notice we don't say that this method is all you need or might find valuable. Had we said that, we hope you would have thought us stupid. Right? There's this, when we talk about processes, right, especially when we're talking about like a professional context, we want to establish processes that can be repeated and mechanized, right? Like business processes that you could just hand off to someone else and they can just do it without thinking, without knowing anything, right? Like McDonald's has done that super well. Just like anyone can come in and just make the burger. It's simple. The process is figured out. But when it comes to internal experience, that's not how it works. And if you just do it rotely, then you're missing every part of it that's important. Because the whole point is to notice that which is not the structure, that which is not within control. The stuff which doesn't yet have a symbol. Anything you learn here can go well with anything else that you may find helpful. If there seems to be a contradiction, go easy. Let your own steps find the way to reconcile the contradiction. Contradiction is a huge thing, right? Contradiction is something that mostly exists in our head. It's like there's this idea and there's this idea and they're incompatible. What the hell? Like, how do I make them make sense together? Logically, it doesn't work. But the fact is, you have them both, right? And you can get a felt sense of that. So that's like an idea that I've heard from other focusing people and other places is contradictions don't exist in the body. Your body is able to hold contradictions in a way that your mind, your intellect cannot. And so you reconcile, you resolve, you don't solve it. One doesn't necessarily win, but they resolve, they reconcile each other. Feel, what does the contradiction feel like in you? Instead of going to your mind and trying to figure out how it makes sense and how can this possibly be. If this is true, it can't, right? Like this fact and that fact don't match up, whatever. Forget that for a second and just be like, how does it feel in me? Because you yourself are holding those two things, those contradictory things. Whether you can figure them out together or not, you're holding them right now. So they're in you at the same time. Feel how it feels. There are other reasons one might not like specifics, such as these steps. Instructions may seem to diminish mystery and openness, although that is not so. There's a lot to be said on there. I won't go into that. I would point you to, on my channel, there's another couple of videos where I read a paper by Jenlin called Improvisation Provides, and that really goes into, I think, what he's getting at in this statement, but I won't talk about it here. Also, written instructions cannot avoid misunderstandings. No formula fits every person. Anyway, one must find one's own path. These problems occur with all types of knowledge about humans. Right? I mean, once we've put something into a word, it's become a concept, it's become an abstraction. It no longer is the experience itself with all of the murky, inarticulate, raw experiencing, right? The word itself can never fully capture it. It can symbolize it, but can never fully capture it. And then when we give that word to someone else, of course they're not gonna have access to all of the stuff in us, all of the meaning, all of the experience which that word symbolizes. If I then tell that word to someone else, right? If I say scared, and that word is symbolizing my experience, of course it's not going to come with all of that intricacy for the other person. It's just a word for them, and they're going to have their own experience of that word. Adopt a split-level approach to all instructions. On the one hand, follow the instructions exactly, so that you can discover the experiences to which they point. On the other hand, be sensitive to yourself and your own body. Assume that only sound expansive experiences are worth having. Interesting. The moment doing it feels wrong in your body, stop following the instructions and back up slightly. Stay there with your attention until you can sense exactly what is going wrong. Yeah. If you can notice in your body that feels wrong, spend time there. Notice what is going wrong. You can do all of these 6 steps with that exact feeling. It's like something feels wrong. Okay? What's that? Felt sense. Get a felt sense of it. So there's something feeling wrong. It's like I'm noticing like a hardness, a resistance in my chest or something like that, right? And you can go through this whole process with that sense that something has gone wrong. And then you can find a lot of clarity for exactly you and how you feel that it's wrong. And then maybe from there, you can find precisely how you can do it better. That's not exactly how the instructions are laid out, right? So you find your own path because you have been extremely intricately, subtly aware of your own experience of the instructions. These are very exact instructions for how to not follow instructions. And of course, they apply to themselves as well. In this way, you will find your own body steps, either through the instructions or through what is wrong with them. Focusing is always like that. You don't push on if it doesn't feel right, but you don't run away either. You go no further, but you back up only a little so that you stay until what it is in the way becomes clear. Focusing is quite safe. It may not work, but it is not negative. So if you sense something that does not feel life-forwarding and sound in your body, sense what is that until that opens. Right? So focusing, like I said in the beginning, like there's a whole book, Focusing-Oriented Psychotherapy, about bringing this essence of focusing to any other therapeutic approach, right? All it is paying attention to the raw experience in your body and then maybe trying to symbolize that, right? So you could do that with like a cognitive approach and be like, I'm having this thought. It's like, okay, I have this thought. I have this inner critic voice that's like, you suck at writing. It says that to me. You suck at writing. And then you just notice What is my raw experience of that? Do I have a felt sense of that? Right? Or maybe even you could use the felt sense to clarify, is that exactly what my critic is saying? You suck at writing. Maybe it's not. And so you're like, oh, that's not actually quite the message. It's more like, I don't know, like you'll never amount to anything, or like, right, whatever, you explore it, you say it, and then like maybe you hit on a different thing that your inner critic is saying, and when you say it, you feel it. You feel that there's this resonance in your body and a relaxation and maybe even a felt shift, right? So you can bring that essence of focusing, that paying attention to raw experience, to any modality you please. Dream work. Jenlin has a whole book on dream work, and it's like the important part about dream work is not remembering exactly what happened in the dream, but paying attention to what is the feeling, the raw experience that you're having from the dream, whatever it is that you remember of it. What is the raw experience that you have of that? And try to symbolize that. So, yeah, you can bring experiencing, right? Experiencing, referencing the flow of feeling in yourself. You can do that no matter what methodology you're using. But isn't it the height of self-contradiction to give exact steps for how to not follow instructions? Indeed, one often needs several attitudes at once. In a society increasingly skilled at human processes, of course we share the specifics we learn. Shall we teach the specifics of driving a car and not the specifics of finding and opening the bodily felt sense? But human processes do give rise to more different specifics than can be logically consistent. Yeah, I feel terrible and I feel happy somehow. For example, human nature is not fixed and not knowable in some single system. That is fortunate. No knowledge can push you out of the driver's seat of your life. Ooh, that's a great line. No knowledge can push you out of the driver's seat of your life, especially not our knowledge here, which is to be about finding your own process. Therefore, this knowledge here must arrange for itself to be superseded by you, as you sense for what feels sound inside you. Instructions for not following instructions are the essence of focusing, one's own inwardly opening steps. If you stop and sense what's wrong at any point, and if you wait there until that opens and reveals itself, you can make good use of all sorts of methods and instructions. You do any method better than its authors can arrange. Yeah, because you're bringing these instructions are always going to be abstractions, right? If you get instructions from someone else, if you get instructions from a book, they're always going to be abstractions. So then you take them and you try them and you feel what's your experience of them. And if something feels not right, you pay attention to what is that experience, and then you can figure out what's the right thing for you. Why doesn't that set of instructions work for you, and what might work instead? You bring it into yourself. You bring it as close as possible into yourself, and you make it personal rather than general. That's how to find your own path. So, yeah, that's the 6 steps of focusing as I understand them. That's certainly not all I have to say about focusing, but I will stop this for now. And if you have listened to this, if you've watched this and you have questions, absolutely let me know those questions. I would be happy so happy to talk about this with you. This is one of my, I don't know, passion, I guess. I just can't help myself. I'm just endlessly fascinated by this stuff. So, yeah, ask your questions and let's talk. And until then, have an awesome day, night, whatever it is for you. Until next time.